Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com. And just so you know, this is my natural color. I haven't put rouge or makeup on, and I haven't
Rhonda
been out.
didn't do your makeup this morning?
No, and I haven't been out in the sun. I haven't been playing golf. As we're recording, I'm recovering from having my knee scoped. So I just had that done yesterday. So it's been just about 24 hours. And I'm doing fine. I'm not taking any medication, but I got it this morning. I'm like, I'm red. I'm beet red.
Just thought Rhonda embarrassed you before you got on and you just,
No,
turned beet red.
No. Well, she didn't even notice. So, so I got that going for me. We've laid off here for a week or two, just travel, and Lisa's been busy and I've been busy, and you guys know life gets in the way. Life and work just get in the way of all the fun that we want to have here. But so Lisa's asking me before we hit record, what's on your mind? I'm like, we had been riffing about a few things. I said all of it, just all of it. So I'll go ahead and mount the pulpit, get this party started. I'm just increasingly frustrated with just the overthinking, the procrastination, the just not getting it done. And I'm strategic as all get out. Mm-hmm. I've been told from the time I was a young man by older folks how strategic I am just by nature. So I am that guy. I'm very focused on processes and systems, which I would fill in the blank with a better word, habits. Mm-hmm. I believe that we are the product of our character and our habits. I don't care what we say. Our character and our habits determine the outcome. But I'm watching this interview with Elon Musk, and I think I've alluded to this before, and he's just a fascinating character. I don't care where you fall politically. I could care less. But as a business guy and as an innovator, he's undeniable as far as being tops in the world. So here's a guy that gets a group of guys together, a group of scientists and engineers together, and launching these rockets. And you probably saw the video clips of them landing this last mission. I mean, they landed it on the launching pad. This thing comes back to Earth, and it just slides right into these arms that grab a hold of it. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. And he talks about all the red tape that he needs to get a launch permit. He can build a rocket quicker than he can get the permit to launch the rocket. That's just a metaphor for where my head's at these days. And as we think about our leadership and how long it takes us to do stuff, and we just have these preconceived notions, largely based on history, just because we lollygagged around before doesn't mean we got to continue the lollygagging. It doesn't mean that things have got to take some inordinate amount of time. And I have an awful lot of conversations about the execution of ideas. I have an awful lot of conversation about whether it's a hiring process, whether it's putting people on performance improvement plans, whether it's improving a system, whether it's documenting a system, you name it. Mm-hmm. And the length of time that we take because we get it in our head that we'll either get around to it, it's either got a low priority, or we overthink it 8 ways to Sunday. And there's just a colossal amount, in my opinion, of lack of execution, where if we would just get on with it and knock it off of our to-do list. You and I have had this conversation. I don't know if we've talked about it on the show. People used to brag to me about, man, you're such a multitasker. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm not a multitasker. I'm a solo tasker. I jump on it, I knock it out, it's done. I don't take the time to write it down. I don't criticize those who do. You're very much a to-do list person.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been a to-do list person. It's not that I don't like lists. I do, but I just don't create. I vet in real time. And I started doing this when I was a kid. Something bubbles up to the top. That's the most important urgent thing. I'm on it. I'm knocking it out. Done. Because I'm figuring, by the time I write it down on a piece of paper and then I transfer it to some other piece of paper and then transfer it to some Post-it note, I can just get the thing done. I'm just going to get the thing done. Clearly, not everything works that way, but it's amazing the number of things that can be done in a real short period of time if we just act on it. I don't know what the problem is other than what I hear. Character and habits. The character and habits that I often see and hear, and I'm not saying they don't come from a good place, but we think of 8 million reasons why we can't get it done and why we can't get it done right now. We think of all kinds of reasons why we can't get to that until next week.
Yeah.
And I don't get it.
I think so much of it, in my world, it has always been, it's the volume and the pace of things that happen. But you also there's differing personalities that impact all that. So when for us, when you're working on something and trying to get something done, it's often owned by somebody, those of us in city government, you recognize that.
Yeah.
It's owned by somebody else, another department. You just happen to, usually how it works for me, I stumble across it. Or in the case of me in city manager's office or me in HR, either way, something that I am in control over or have the authority over, somebody else finds and then says, hey, this is outdated on the website, a form, a practice. Why are we doing, it just naturally evolves as people are interacting in some part of that. It's typically a process is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Process.
And so then once that comes to light, what happens?
Yeah. So then it's a matter, if it's something that I can control that is in my court only, it's easy to fix. You can just go fix it and post it. And let's say it's a marketing something. Our council has priorities. We just completed our quarterly update with council, and we had a reprioritization of some goals and moving around. So we had a new chart. I went out to go grab it to send to my staff, realized it wasn't out there yet, but this had just happened a week ago. And all I did is just emailed, confirmed, in this case, confirmed with my deputy city manager, said, is this the one for posting, or is this just relevant to the goals meeting only? Like, do our standard top 10 still apply? And this was just how they're evolving, and then we'll post it like in the new year. And they said, no, we can repost that. And I said, okay. And I just got with our marketing director, said, can you repost? She had it done in 10 minutes. Updated, but it took a little bit of coordination, right, to go figure that out. Those are the easy ones. You can just, hey, can you handle this? And we've got a pretty efficient team at the city of our executive team, and I'm sure their team members.
If you had to just spitball a percentage of the stuff that crosses your desk that falls in that relatively easy to solve,
probably 10%.
Low.
It's very small. It's very small.
Keep going.
Most of the stuff I have, a piece of it's owned by this department, a piece of this is owned by this department. This department's working on it, but it's not their priority right now. So I have to put it on the list, or we have to meet on it and say, okay, when can we get this updated? Because I'm not there, I have to trust them that they know. Right. To me, it could seem tiny, and I'm sure when they work with me, they're thinking this is so easy, and I'm sure it's the same thing. But typically, we try to fix this stuff quickly that we can, and that. I'm just guessing it's the 10%. More often than not, it's big projects. Like right now, we're working on a business diversity study, and business diversity is where you try to get more minority, women-owned, military, veteran-owned businesses and we're trying to expand upon those in the city. So we've got a study with a firm helping us identify where our spending has fallen and where long term we can improve that, right? And that's a year-long study, and we're right in the middle of it. With that, we're just now getting to explore, okay, how do we do, what do we need, what are we currently collecting, and what do we need to be collecting? And then who owns that? And I found in diving into that, to just explore it, it's 4 different departments.
Mm-hmm.
So first I have to get with the leadership team, because I don't want to overstep, and I could dictate, hey, I want this changed. But I want to coordinate with them and say, because they may have changes going on as well.
That's right.
So the next thing is getting that leadership team together, explaining what we're trying to achieve. I have one person that reports to me doing this. They have teams of many. And so it's like, here's what we found we have. Is this what you have? And here's what we need. Is that collected anywhere else? Where can we? And then we're going to have to start diving. And that's just one component of it. We have a system that's outdated. We're in the middle of getting ready to update. So it's how much of that do we want to redo now when it's going to be redone as we configure it in the next year? So now we're making decisions of, do we really want to change it? Do we not want to change it since we're going to be changing it? You don't want to invest the time twice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it's all these little tiny pieces that alone, if I owned it, I could go fix it right now and just publish it. But I don't understand impact to those teams and to the people they're working with. So we have to be considerate. That's where I call it the time suck. That's where the time suck occurs. Not because they want it to, just because it is.
Well,
It's
and to
just
be
a time
fair,
suck.
everything in city
It's
government.
not mine.
And to be fair, everything in city government is collaboration.
Yes.
Because there's a bunch of different constituents here. I mean, so you've got council, you've got CMO,
Vendors.
you've got vendors, you've got citizens, you've got
Businesses,
It's
yeah.
it's not lost on me. I just sit and I hear the stories. Now, keep in mind, I'm only working with high performers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't work with low performing cities. I don't work with low performing individuals.
Yep.
But I see the frustrations of just wanting to get on with it and revisiting challenges. And I just wonder, of course, you know me. I've posed the question before to leadership teams. I do it pretty regularly. What would world class look like?
Yeah.
If we were the best at it, whatever it is, if we were the best police department, if we were the best fire department, if we were the best public works department, if we were the best library, if we were the best HR team, what would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty fascinating that everybody can give you
Pretty much the same list, I suspect.
well, everybody can give you really descriptive language of all that.
Yeah. We did that here, and none of it's surprising. And
No.
we had it broken into how many?
Yeah.
5 teams? They all came up with the same words independently.
Yeah, it was a big group that we did it with at that
I think
retreat.
it was 20 something of us.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, well now what words on that list don't describe us? And you start marking them off, and before
And you're like, oh crap.
and before and this is universally true, by the way.
Yeah.
You end up marking through virtually everything. And to your point, some of it is just absolutely, it's just the way the industry is.
Yeah.
Every industry has its own stuff. I learned as a young man that if we think the grass is greener on the other side, it's just because we don't see the weeds, because we're not over there.
Right.
We're over here, we see our grass, but we're really focused on the weeds. The minute we get over there, guess what we see? Weeds and thorns and thistles.
Yeah.
And we see all the stuff that we didn't see when we were on the other side of the fence. So every industry has got that. Every industry has got seasonality or these time cycles. Every industry has got these challenges, which necessarily means they've all got these opportunities. I just get fixated on, for me, AI is not artificial intelligence. It's just always improving. So how can we improve it? Is there some way for 4 departments to get on board and more cohesive quicker? I'm not saying I got the answer. I got questions. I just have questions, and it's how my mind works of thinking. And I think this is where leadership steps in. And this is really the focal point of it. I think leadership, when it comes to high performing teams, because I've seen this over and over and over, when we challenge high performers, they rise to the occasion. And high performers love the challenge. I just wonder, and I'm just wondering out loud, Lisa and I haven't rehearsed this, I'm just wondering out loud. So on situations where you've got 4 departments, I'm wondering what a leadership challenge would look like, meaning a challenge to these people for us to get this solved. I get we got a lot going on, but if we get this one off the conveyor belt and taken care of, that's one less thing that's on the timeline for all of us. I'm not saying that that's practical.
Right.
But innovation's not practical.
Right.
Innovation is never practical. And I think that's worth noting.
It comes down to, and I've talked a lot about this, and Cheryl and I, my boss, have talked a lot about this, is it really comes down to what are you actually trying to solve? Because if you break it down into little pieces, you can get the little pieces done. The
Right.
challenge becomes when you have, and we've all got them, and we all or probably have done this ourselves at some point, is we get so honed in on wanting to fix 100% of the entire issue that we lose sight of, can we fix that 10% right now? And then let's
Right.
keep working. Let's just do one thing at a time. Let's get that fixed. Okay,
Right.
that part's done. Now what's the next piece? Now let's look at, I don't know what it is. Like, so in our case, I go back to our business diversity. We're going to have to look at vendor packets, what we collect and where we
Yeah.
collect it.
Yeah.
And then where do we need to load it? That's
Well,
3
and that-
parts.
and that's a
we
big-
can look at
that's-
what are we collecting and can we add the fields we need? Let's just do that first, get it updated. So we start collecting the data. Then where are we going to load it? That's another piece. Now we could say we're doing nothing until we solve for this entire, how do we get businesses information? Where do we need to load it? And when do we need to load it? We could do that. We could take months and try to figure that out, or we can fix it a little at a time and go, now at least the packet's fixed. So
And
let's fix the packet.
Who drives the bus for it to be one way or the other?
Well, I've got to check because we're changing as we move along. So things
And
are
this
getting
is
reassigned.
and this is, to be fair,
This is real life.
This is a big, complex, long term. This is not a we'll knock that out before the end of business today. It's not
No.
one of those things.
No,
But
because
who
there's
determines whether you do it in bite-sized solutions, or we're going to wait until we have the whole stinking thing done?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a mutual decision. If I were able to do it, I would want us to fix pieces that we can fix, get that one knocked out, because when you do it in bites, we are so busy, it is less overwhelming to those that are having to do. In other words, those team members that are having to make the changes. And I'm always thoughtful.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel like you have to get this entire project changed in addition to your daily work. Let's just change. Can we change this one aspect to get that fixed? We got that fixed. Now we're collecting it. Now let's go to the next piece. Unless the pieces directly impact one another.
In your experience, the benefits of that for the team, for culture, for
sanity.
morale.
It's just, to me, it's sanity, because it's something that they see is achievable in little pieces. It's kind of like we're getting ready to do our ERP implementation, where our entire business is going to change.
Yep.
Our managers are going to have to do things differently. Our employees are having a new system. We are setting up the system differently. The power users in HR, IT, purchasing, budget, all it's going to change.
Yep.
That is one big project that's going to come to an end. And you have to roll it out and go live at some point. But in between there, you're doing research on what are our current processes, and that's a check mark. And then now we need to configure HR, and that's a check mark. And then we need to set up the chart of accounts with finance, and that's a check mark. So to me, these little individual chunks as you move through the big process gives a sense of accomplishment. And I think on any project, that's how I choose to look at it. We can wait until the big bang.
Right.
But you have to, Cheryl and I were just talking about this, trying to recognize as we move through the project, the successes and the stories, as little as they might be, is a sense of accomplishment and purpose that we've accomplished this piece. We're moving on.
Yeah, you need small
gotta
wins.
have that.
You need small wins.
If you just go big all the time, staff is completely stressed because it's impacting what they're doing now. And every time you stretch that, they're going, I know this is going to change. I don't, man, this is 5 more things I'm going to have to update at the end of this. And so moving through it in chunks is helpful, but that has to be have buy-in from everybody involved, that's how we're going to move through it, that this is, and communicating that we're just going to fix a few things at a time. And by the end, the whole thing should be improved, but we're not trying to get to perfection because it's all going to change in this new project anyway. Right. We're just trying to get it manageable. Right. So you do have to agree upon, which I think is critical. I used to do this myself many years ago. And as I continued escalating in my career by responsibility and authority, it became much more obvious that you don't have to achieve perfection. You need to achieve improvement. And I used to be, well, that's, if we could just capture this whole thing and report on it and get it into this, well, then it becomes too big and nobody wants to do it. You just have to have digestible chunks.
You could do that if it was the only thing on your agenda, but you got a million other things on the agenda.
Right.
There's a Robert Collier quote that we've had in our show note, and Lisa and I kind of keep this working document, but we've had it in there for a long, long time. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. How would you define y'all's organization, the success of the sum of small efforts? What are the habitual small efforts as it relates to what we're talking about? Is the repeated small effort taking problems, breaking them down into bite-size accomplishments? That a metaphor could be weight loss. Okay, so if I put on 50 pounds, I'm not putting 50 pounds on overnight, and I'm not going to take off 50 pounds overnight.
Right.
But taking off the first 2 to 5 can feel pretty good.
It's
and
progress.
Can fuel the next. Is that systemic in y'all's culture, do you think?
I
that
think
approach?
I think that in my opinion,
not to put you on the spot, but I
think there are some that do this really well, and it's always a work in progress of achieving that concept. For us, part of that habitual approach has to be pushed down from leadership. It has to be, because what I find sometimes is we as leaders at some level and up, whatever that is in your organization, at some level and up, we're holding on to the specifics. One thing I always tried to press on my teams is we've achieved high performance at the point the lowest level in the organization could solve for problems, identify them and solve. If it always has to rise up to the leaders, they say, hey, we're having this horrible problem, and they have to escalate up 2 and 3 people to tell them how to achieve it and what do we need to do and lead that conversation, we have a failure in leadership. Now, that doesn't mean, and I don't mean that you're incompetent. What I'm trying to indicate is that as leaders, we need to be teaching our teams, okay, how are we going to solve for this? And not dictating it. It's getting your team to say, no, okay, what prevented us from solving it at your level? Well, I thought we had to have approvals, and I had to explore that a lot. They're like, well, I thought it needed to work up. I don't know enough about the system. Well, who does know? And I just had to keep asking questions. Could you guys have worked together on that? Do you feel comfortable? I guess we could have. Are you letting us? Yes. Yes, please solve it, but communicate.
Right.
And I always used to tell them, don't just change something because you don't like the way it's done, because it may have a bigger purpose that you don't yet know about.
That's right.
And so it was just trying to educate on where they could make decisions for improvements and what needed to escalate with a solution option, and then getting approval to pursue that option. Right. But I tried to get away from me having to solve for it. I tried to teach and educate, how can you solve for it? And what gaps in knowledge do you have that are preventing you from solving, and then teaching it to them.
Yeah.
So
I think it's beneficial if leaders can have enough self-awareness to understand your situation, your culture, the way that your team, your organization rolls. I mean, if we lean into this quote, success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. What are those? And I can promise you that low performers or average performing organizations, they don't know what the sum of their small efforts are. They don't know what they're repeating day in and day out. I mean, many of them are just putting one foot in front of the other. They're just
and it's
blindly pushing through.
it does come down to kind of an art. We talk about every issue relates to communication.
Mm-hmm.
So does this. When you're trying to solve for anything, the sum of small efforts, you have to recognize, which is sometimes difficult, at what point can I push to do something quicker? And at what point do I need to listen to my team because they have 90 other priorities, and that's going to shift them and create stress? You have to know the balance of that, because it is very easy when you're a high performer to say, guys, can we just knock that out today? And to us, that sounds super easy. To them, they are now stressed because they had 10 other things they had to get done before the end of the day that are now being pushed to solve for this issue for me.
What have you learned?
Sense? So it's a balancing act of
What have
knowing.
you learned? What have you learned over the course of your career as far as that goes? Vetting those things that you know and you are convinced this is not that hard. Admittedly, as leaders, we all think that there's an easy button.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things that we don't really fully understand, things that may be way more complicated than we realize. And it's just like, can't you just make that happen?
Yeah.
And it's not that easy. But there are some other things that we fully understand and we get it. And we know that there's a million other things, but we also know we can knock this out and be done with this. We can forget that. We can get this off of our plate. What have you learned over the course of your career and how to vet that?
There's a couple of things. One, you have to know the people. You have to know if you have somebody that just gets into the weeds on every project and wants to do it from 1 to 100 steps.
Yeah.
You have to know how to break it down and say, okay, I know we want to achieve that. That's going to take us months. I always call it, I said, what's the low hanging fruit that we could do immediately that would improve this a little for all of us? And usually we have a list of things that we have brainstormed or gathered.
So is this a person, describe this person. So is this a person, I want everything to be just ideal and perfect, or, I mean, what's going on?
Well, you have some that say, yes, we can get these 5 things done. And then you have some that will say, we could do those 5 things, but if we're going to do those 5 things, we want to document it. We want to get a new process. I need to know how we're going to enter it in the system, how we're going to spread it they'll just go on and on. Yeah. And it's really good because those are also exceptionally organized people that fix your whole process.
Yeah.
Like, it is not our strength is also our weakness. Yeah, right. So like everything. Mm-hmm. So it's really knowing that and getting collaboration on, okay, I understand that we need to fix the whole problem. I agree. So that's how I've approached it. Typically that works well is, I agree we want to fix this, but fixing it's going to be a 5-month process. We're trying to make steps toward improvement. What steps can we agree on that we could do now that would help the process for everybody involved and begin the process of fixing? And then usually they'll start talking about that. And then I usually go around, okay, do you agree? You agree that if we did these 5 things, what problems does that create? No, it doesn't create any problems. How fast can we do those? We can get those done in a day. Anybody else need to know that we haven't told? Like any other impact if we do this? And they'll say, oh, we need to get with marketing because it's posted on the website. We need to get with so-and-so because they pull it down. That's what usually starts happening. And you realize, okay, there's 5 more people we need to bring into this. So really it comes down to just communication, making them feel like they're part of the solution and not dictating it. When we start saying, no, just go fix it, just go get that knocked out today, and I want it posted by tomorrow. That becomes the problem because you're devaluing them unintentionally. Well, maybe intentionally, but you're devaluing the importance and their concerns. And it appears you're not listening or even caring who it impacts and how.
Yeah,
so
to be clear,
that's my approach is I just try to get them to agree.
Sure.
Let's focus on 5 things or 4 things or 2 things or 10 things. Or I've also had where the person that gets in the weeds say, if we're going to do this 5, can we just take an extra week and correct these other things? Because if we do that, that solves for 50% of our problems. And then we can usually say, let everybody agree to take an extra week.
Sure.
That's great. And then making sure there's no hurdle you haven't uncovered yet that exists that you don't even know about. So it all comes down, frankly, to communication and empowerment and trust. I mean, if you can get those 3 things on any team, whether they're your team or multiple teams, for us, it's always pace. It's always impact. We're all trying to make changes to things to make them better. And then it's just balancing the priority, period. And then we also have people that report, like in this case that I'm working on, they report to different people, not me.
Right.
So then I'm making sure, when you were talking about the challenges, I always tell them if I get into the weeds person and I can't get them to move off of it, I'll go to their boss and say, here's what I'm trying to achieve, but I'm really getting concerns about wanting to do the whole thing. They report to you, and I've suggested they talk to you because I want you all to agree. I'm not going to dictate this of what's priority. And then I let them hash it out, and usually they get back. And that also shows not only compassion, but your willingness to listen to the concerns and have agreement so that they can sometimes, like I'm a processor. Even Cheryl knows when you tell me stuff that's bad news, I need to think about it for a minute.
Yeah.
Not that I'm objecting to it, but I got to think about, okay, what's the impact? What do I need to do? What do I need to tell them to make sure they understand? That kind of thing. So we're all different, and you just have to respect the differences to get to the goal.
And there's a difference between, I want to make a distinction. There's a difference between speed and innovation and wanting to solve for something and then the knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
And I think we all know the difference.
Knee-jerk never ends well.
No, it just
because
doesn't.
it pisses somebody off, unfortunately, when we just start dictating.
It's too impulsive for high performer. And there may be one out there. I don't know of an organization. I've never had firsthand knowledge of an organization or a team that was high performing, that was world class by any measurement, that was knee-jerk or impulsive, any more than I have known any wise people who are impulsive.
Right.
I mean, they're thoughtful, they're strategic. Now, it doesn't mean that they're slow, but they're thoughtful and strategic, and to your point, really stellar at communication, especially stellar at having candid conversations and just being able to just cut to the chase and not have a bunch of crap in front of it, to just get to the point. How over the course of your career, I'm not even asking for current timeline, but over the course of your career, the frustration factor as it relates to all of this stuff to a group of people, meaning a group of people, what have you sensed over the course of your career, the frustration level of teams of people who may have wanted to get on with it, as opposed to listen, it's just such an avalanche of work to be done. Last thing we need is something else. But if you flip that, I wonder what the frustration levels that you have seen of people who are just like, why don't we just go ahead and fix this?
I've seen it honestly both ways over my career here and when I worked at EDS, which is now Hewlett Packard. So private, public alike, it is the same issues. They're just on differing topics. The frustration factor, has always, and I'm thinking back as far as I can, frustration comes in when there is no communication or no concern for your input. When you are managing, when you are involved with what you're changing,
Right.
when they don't get asked, they're not involved or they're not told, it's just dictated we're changing.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't had an opportunity to even one, know about it, or two, be asked of what needs to be improved most.
Yeah,
That's where the
and they've
most
got thought,
frustration
and they've
I've
got
ever
thoughts,
seen comes
and they've
from.
got thoughts about it for
Yeah.
sure.
And sometimes you don't want to, I get it. You don't really want to hear it. We're going to make this change. Um, but most things, and I get there's some things that it's just tell mode, whether it's a budget issue, whether it's, we don't ask their opinions because it's not going to make a difference on this decision
Mm-hmm.
where we have to do this as a company, whatever. But that's so rare in the circumstances. 90% of the time, you can take a few minutes to say, hey, I want to change this process. Here's what I'm feeling are the pain points for expressed. We need to look into this and getting a team together that can explore that quickly and then giving them communicated timelines. I'd like this to be resolved. I'd like this to at least be improved in the next 2 weeks and
Mm-hmm.
see what we can get done in 2 weeks. Right. So it doesn't have to be everything. Um, that's the number one frustration. The other frustration I have seen, to your point, and it typically comes from people that don't understand or haven't asked you, that say, why can't we just get this done? This is ridiculous. They haven't asked. It's just in their mind, it's easy, but they don't understand the inner workings
Right.
of what is being done and the impact, system limitations, people limitations,
Yeah, they're
programming
looking at surface
limitations.
level stuff.
They're looking at surface level and think this should be, that was easy.
Right,
The easy
right.
button, right? So I have seen that, but that's typically from people who just don't have any interest in uncovering it or understanding it.
Well, my barometer for high performing teams is not real complicated, and it's not terribly scientific. And people could argue, well, that's purely anecdotal, but I would argue that no, it's way more than anecdotal. When a team of people, when a group of people, or an individual person comes and says, "Hey, boss, we had this problem, and we solved it, and here's how we solved it," then you know you've arrived.
Yes, exactly. And even more so, they end the question with anything we missed,
Yeah,
because they're strategic enough to go,
Yeah.
hey, we've changed it. Anything we've missed?
right.
And you're like, sweet.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and we talked about that in our team when we were changing a lot of stuff. It does take time to get to that level, and it is very easy to lose that level if you have any kind of turnover, because the team
yeah,
is disrupted, and what was a well-oiled machine, something now goes awry. It's like your car.
yeah,
Your serpentine belt breaks,
yeah,
that well-oiled machine
yeah.
now doesn't even turn on, right?
Yeah,
It won't
that's
roll.
right. It's seized
So,
up. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah.
So
Parting shots, parting thoughts about this. Just again, I'm just a guy that's sitting here thinking, how can this be better?
yeah,
Can this be better? So my parting shot, and then you can have the last word, would be look at your team. I mean, let's challenge ourselves to be better. We're always challenging our people to be better. It just makes sense to me that we not be hypocrites as leaders, and that we challenge ourselves to get better. And mostly what we're talking about are things that are opportunities that are guised in problems or challenges or things that may frustrate our people. And I just wonder, and I'm just wondering, I'm not saying they can all be fixed easily, and I'm not saying they can all be fixed quickly, but I'm wondering how many of them could be fixed more quickly, more easily, if we just gave them the thought that it could be done. Just because it took us 6 months to get the last thing done, does that mean it's going to take us 6 months to get the next thing done? Maybe. Maybe it's going to take 8 months. I don't know. I'm just a guy who's fascinated by the prospect of how much better could it be? How much faster could it be?
I think.
And here
for
was
me,
my analogy as a business guy, and then I'll shut up.
Sure.
I wanted to take my first shot assume that we're doing long distance target shooting. I wanted to take my first shot before the competition did. I get in city government, maybe you don't have competition, but you do. Everything's competition. So I wanted to take my first shot, and then I wanted to be able to spot and see how far. I wanted to take a thoughtful shot. I wasn't just shooting from the hip. I was taking an aim, but I was taking the best aim I could, but I wanted to squeeze the shot. I wanted to get the shot down range really quickly. Now let's take a look at it. How far off am I? Now make an adjustment. By the time I got to my third shot, competitors were just taking their first shot. My argument to my team was always the same. Do you think our third shot is going to be more accurate than their first? Every hand goes up. Then how can we take our first two shots? Can we take our first two shots and be close enough that we've made an improvement? That's the metaphor.
Yeah, it's for me. It really, there's a couple of key points. One, leadership. We keep defining as a focus on others. This is no different when you're trying to create a high performing team. You have to, one, communicate the expectation. I find so many times, Randy, that people think people should know. They should have known X. They should have known Y. I don't know why they did that. And it's a difference of opinion of how they would have done it.
Yeah, and nobody told them. Nobody talked to them.
No,
we hear that all the time.
The problem with that,
I'd have done it that way, but you didn't tell me. Nobody told me.
It's all about perspective.
Yeah.
What they have heard and you have said are almost always two different things. So
well, and sometimes you haven't said it, but you
and
thought
sometimes you didn't say it at all. I want this project done, and I want it done timely.
Right.
Okay, Randy.
That's great, except I don't know
Except
I don't know what you want done, and I don't know when you want it done.
Timely to Randy means today, right now. You're a mark it off the list kind of guy. I want it done that right. My mind, I'm thinking, well, we need to get that done in the next 7 months.
Yeah.
Big because I know everybody's got X going on.
That's right.
So one,
That's
communication, right. 2, clarify expectations on whatever this is. And 3, remind them of the purpose and the goals, which is to constantly, we want to be a high performing team. High performing teams have very strong processes, and they're communicated processes so that everybody does them the same way, no matter who you encounter. You start doing that and not feeling like you have to take it from A to Z before you can do anything. Boil it down to manageable chunks of the project to achieve an end result. Well, we've talked about this. It's not a marathon, it's a sprint, or it's not a sprint and it's a marathon. It's neither of these really. It's a bunch of sprints, but the marathon never has a finish time. It's just you just keep having sprints.
Yeah, you're just sprinting.
Yeah, you're going to keep sprinting, stopping. Oof, I completed that one. Well, there's 10 more that now we need to sprint on.
That's right.
So it's a never, to me, like you said, AI always improving. That should never stop. You can check off what you just improved, but there's 10 other things you need to keep working on. And that always keeps the needle of high performing teams moving.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, a city government leadership podcast. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. Be well, do good, grow great. The website is growgreat.com.